5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
It's 10:05. This is Kay Adams with you till 12 on BBC Radio Scotland. We were talking about the UCI Cycling World Championships, and Laura says, of course, it's a huge benefit to the whole country, especially the cities it was in. Some people will always complain no matter what. Thank goodness. That's why we have a phone in. 80295. Still to come this morning.
When I was 25, I founded and ran the national media and political campaign to make upskirting illegal.
That's gender equality activist Gina Martin talking about the campaign that kick-started her work, but she's going to be here shortly to tell us how to handle difficult conversations in her new book. No offence, but you've heard that one before, haven't you? And
you removed it from its original packaging.
No! It's no longer a collectible!
yes, I'll resist the voice. No, I didn't resist the voice. What makes a toy collectible? More to the point, what makes a trading card worth £2 million? A single trading card just sold for $2 million. We'll find out what happened there. And Simon Calder is here. Well, I say he's here with his travel surgery. When I say he's here with his travel surgery, we have no idea where he is with his travel surgery. Do you know what I mean? But he'll be at the end of a phone somewhere. So you can call him 08085 92 95 00 or text him 80295. Where was he last time?
Just arrived at Europe's most exciting airport.
Where in the world will Simon be today? If you've got a question, he's got the answers. Get in touch.
All the conversations that matter.
Mornings with Kay Adams on BBC Radio Scotland.
Gina Martin is coming up after this. Lots more texts coming in, though, too, around cycling. What did surprise me, says this one, was for a low-impact sport, there are literally hundreds of vehicles accompanying them. Police, motorcyclists, police cars, media vehicles, security, support cars. I was rather taken aback. He's waiting for a star to fall.
I know I stand in line until you think you have the time to spend an evening with me. And if we go someplace to dance, I know that there's a chance you won't be leaving with me. Then afterwards we drop into a quiet little place and have a drink or two. And then I go and spoil it all by saying something stupid like I love you. I can see it in your eyes that you despise the same old lies you heard the night before. And though it's just a line to you, for me it's true and never seemed so right before. Practice every day to find some clever lines to say to make the meaning come true. But then I think I'll wait until the evening gets late and I'm alone with you. The time is right, your perfume fills my head, the stars get red and oh the night's so blue. Then I go and spoil it all by saying something stupid like I love you. The time is right, your perfume fills my head, the stars get red and oh the night's so blue. And then I go and spoil it all by saying something stupid like I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you.
Spark sparkly wee song that is, isn't it? You just can't resist getting out the old jazz hands when you hear that one. That's maybe that's just me. By Boy Meets Girl. A little update on the football. Hang on, I have to peer over here. This is, of course, England against Nigeria in the Women's Football World Cup. This is for a place in the quarter-finals. 82 minutes gone, and it is a goalless draw, so it looks a little bit tense there. Any change in that, I will let you know. Now, back in 2019, gender equality activist Gina Martin succeeded in making upskirting an offence in England and Wales. It had been in Scotland since 2010. Now Gina is extending her campaigning to include a range of difficult conversations with the publication of a new book, No Offence But, which I have in my hand. Gina joins us now to tell us all about it. Good morning to you, Gina.
Good morning, thanks for having me.
Not at all. And you thought it was a sparkly little song too, didn't you? Because I could see you nodding your head along.
Yeah, I was bopping on my own in the corner here.
Jolly good. So in 2019, if we go back to that was very much the beginning of a journey for you rather than the end, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely right. I started the campaign in 2017 after being upskirted at a festival and ran that campaign, national media campaign and political campaign with my lawyer, and worked in Parliament until 2019 when I changed it. And I definitely thought I was going to amend the Sexual Offences Act and go back to work in an office like I was doing, but that's not what happened.
Yeah. So you were thrown into campaigning really then? That wasn't something that you had already been involved in?
No, I think a lot of people are. I think much of the time it comes from personal experience where you're so frustrated with having dealt with something and having relied on the kind of support systems that maybe potentially don't support you when the thing happens. And you think, okay, let me just see if I can take this as far as I can myself. And a lot of campaigners I know are like that. It definitely comes from personal experience.
So can I take it then that experience made you then look at other parts of our world and our culture and our society and think, that's something that maybe we need to be talking about, and that's something that maybe we need to be talking about as well, and then we have a book.
Yeah, absolutely that. I think working on the upskirting campaign was to be working on something around sexual violence, right? To be working on kind of this entitlement to women and girls' bodies and what that means in our culture. And to be good at my work, I really felt like I can't look at these things as if they're separated. I have to sort of evaluate the culture that we participate in, all of us, that leads to these things happening, and where these things come from, and what kind of mindsets allow a culture of sexual violence to thrive, or what kind of mindsets allow, a justice system that has essentially decriminalized rape with 1.6% of cases going to prosecution. So there was definitely the need to look at this holistically. And part of this book came out of the fact that I've spent 7 years in rooms with people, whether that's politicians or victims and survivors or police chiefs or parents and teachers who care about these things. And so many people have said to me, how do you respond to this? And then given me a phrase without losing it, because I just don't know how to get through the conversation constructively because there's so much emotion behind it.
Well, I'm looking at the book now and looking at the contents, and you've got a range of different contributors to the book. And so if we preface everything with No Offence But, which is the title of the book, and then we've got to play devil's advocate, if you don't want attention, cover up. Not all men. I don't do politics. I'm hoping I'm getting the emphasis right here, Gina.
You do really well.
You can't say anything these days. Tell us about some of these.
Yeah, these are all phrases. I wrote 10 chapters on phrases I've heard the most in my work. So those generally circulate around misogyny and sexism. So those kind of not all men, boys will be boys, what you just read there. And then I tackled some others that I was really interested in digging into where they come from and what the impact of them is in culture and in conversation. And then the 10 people that are joining me are people that over the last 7 years in this work, I've learned from. So they're the people that I've looked to and I've been like, okay, my uncle or my friend has said, I don't see color. I don't know what the big deal is. And how can I respond to that constructively? And how can I help them understand whether that's helpful, whether it's not, which it isn't. So it really was important to me to have these 10 people in this book that talk on these other issues that I can't write on, but other people I've looked to learn from.
I mean, has anything in this process challenged your view? Because I guess when you write a book like this, and it might hack some people off, to be perfectly honest, that there is a sort of sense that you know right, that you have got the kind of moral advantage, if you like. Is there anything that has challenged you?
Yeah, there was two big moments when I was working on the project where the format of the book, one of the contributors kind of called me in and said, I think the format of this book, there's something you're doing in this book which is not cool, and we need to have a conversation about it. And we're actually going to talk about that, me and Nova, publicly, because I think it's really important to be really honest about where you've messed up and like where you continue to mess up and how you get to the place where you're able to comfortably have these conversations, because all of us are at different stages and all of us are trying and struggling. And it took about 2 months of work, and I actually changed the way I worked to make sure I wouldn't make decisions like that again. But it was really hard. Like, it sucked. Like, we had really difficult conversations about that, and I was really grateful to her. And also Kathy Ray in the book was like, do you have any disabled representation? And I was like, I wanted to, but no. And she was like, okay, let's have a conversation about why. And could I be that representation in the book? And she writes a great chapter on disabled people are such an inspiration, this kind of infantilizing idea that anything disabled people do is incredible, and how that makes her feel and how that kind of creates dominant narratives about disabled people. And that was another moment where I was like, yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, could have done better there. And like, I'm not getting it right all the time. And I think that's the really important thing we have to do as activists, is show that we are constant works in progress and we're messing up often. But it's the commitment to being better and the trying and the showing up again and again that makes the difference.
Who would you hope would read this book, and what impact would you hope that it would have?
I would really hope that dominant cultures and dominant groups would read this book. So, for instance, for my chapters being about kind of sexist or misogynistic things we hear, or kind of minimizing phrases to do with women and their experiences, I really want men to read this book. I think it could be really useful for men to be able to unpick why some of these phrases that they've heard around them in their community so often are essentially contributing to and upholding a culture in which we allow things to happen to women, and we minimize the things that happen to women. And you know, it's exactly the perfect book to pass along to a friend and say, like, have you read this essay? Like, it's really interesting because I've never thought about it this way before. And then with the other 10 chapters from contributors, that, you know, we're looking at chapters on transphobia, the big moral panic that's being whipped up about trans people right now. We're looking at chapters on disability. We're looking at chapters on racism. So for me, it's the dominant cultures where we might hear those phrases the most. So, you know, I'd love to see white people, able-bodied people, non-trans people, cis people reading these chapters and being like, let me dig into why these phrases have been around so long. And I think when you read the book, what you'll find is not, here's all the answers and exactly how to respond. Like, there's a secret bullet. Let's put this to bed. Let's you know, these phrases need to die. It's a much more nuanced exploration of how we as people arrive at these kind of attitudes and how we can do better and show up for each other with more compassion.
I'm going to pluck a name, just, well, not quite out of the ether, but just picking up on what you've said there. How do you think someone like Piers Morgan might receive this book? I mean, funnily enough, I saw a clip of him responding to the Barbie movie, and he was like, oh my God, don't go on about the patriarchy again. I'm fed up hearing about the patriarchy. He clearly was not impressed. I'm not asking you for your views on the Barbie movie. But, you know, someone like that, potentially, from what you've said, might embody what you're talking about. How do you think that he might receive your book?
Well, firstly, I don't think he will receive my book. I don't think he'll want to read it. We talk a lot in this work about...
Is that not a bit of the problem, though? You're preaching to the choir.
Well, no, because there's not just people who completely disagree with this and people who completely get it. Like, it's much more complex than that. There's all different types of people with different experiences, different identities, different contexts of how they've grown up. You know, there's people I know that have been really responsive to some phrases in the book and not responsive as much to others. So I think the problem we have, right, is that we simplify all this stuff so much. And to write a book like this and have 350 pages, hopefully exploring this with some kind of nuance is why I did it, because it's much harder to write a project like that. Because easier to write a project like, because there's so much to explore than it is to, you know, fit it into a social media post when these are such big, complex things. I think Piers Morgan potentially is someone that isn't going to be particularly open to these type of ideas, not least because his platform is sort of built on the idea of being combative about these things. I mean, he pretty much profits from this, so I don't think he's kind of the person who will be open to it. But we always talk in this work about quality over quantity. It's not about changing everyone's mind. It's about having a human conversation with the people in your life, and helping them arrive at healthier conclusions if that's something they can do. So Piers Morgan isn't someone I would probably try and change his mind, but there are lots of people who maybe would be uncomfortable with these type of topics that I would really love to have a conversation with that was human and compassionate and see where we could get to.
Do you think, that we do have a problem in having, as you say, these highly nuanced conversations because of where we seem to have got to in public discourse, where we tend to be in our camps, tribes, we always use that word, don't we? But people are combative, aren't they? And they want to defend their position. It doesn't really lend itself to the kind of complex conversations that you would want to have as a result of a book like this.
Yeah, I think it's a real struggle, and I think there's many reasons for that. I definitely really struggle with the way in which it's so easy for us to go on social media and have a kind of argument in the comments, but a lot of the things that we hear on social media don't work in real life. Like when you're sitting opposites, I work in schools and with teachers and parents having conversations around gender and misogyny and the things we've been taught about how we're meant to act because of that, and how we can arrive at healthier conclusions in terms of consent and bodily autonomy and all those kinds of things. And a lot of these kind of pithy phrases that we're hearing online of like, just say this or just do this, they don't work in real life with real people when you're looking into the whites of someone's eyes and you've got the context of how they arrived there. So I think, having a conversation, it sounds really simple, but like a constructive conversation is a real skill. And we're not really taught how to have those compassionate conversations as we grow up in school. If anything, the closest we're taught is to debate, and debating is just to win. Yeah. And I think if you go into a conversation like this trying to essentially shut someone up, silence someone, or win, it becomes very hard to de-escalate that conversation to a place where they're not defensive and you can actually be constructive. So I think we also have to be really kind to ourselves, right? And be like, these are massive, massive issues we're dealing with. We're not taught how to have these conversations. So any piece of work that we can engage with that allows us to do it in a human and constructive and compassionate way can only be a good thing. And I also, just to finish that, I think there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of struggle, a lot of these issues, when someone hears I don't see colour, the reaction to that is not just to the reaction of hearing that phrase, it's to the hundreds of experiences they've had that they've put in a box and they've tried to ignore their whole lives, how they've been marginalised for their race. So I think if we can try and learn the skill of this kind of conversation, and we can also essentially try to be less reactive, more proactive, and have quality conversations over quantity, I think that's a good start.
Well, listen, Gina, I've really enjoyed speaking to you, and if people would like to hear you in conversation, you're appearing at the Edinburgh Book Festival. That is Sunday the 13th of August at Baillie Gifford's Sculpture Court, and I believe you're going to be joined by two of the contributors to the book, which is called No Offence But. Gina, thank you very much indeed. Thanks.
Thanks so much for having me.
It's your ticket to the Edinburgh Festival.
Saturday, August 19th, Memphis Wrestling and the Pontotoc Run Club are tag teaming with Hacksaw Jim Duggan to fundraise for St. Jude. Meet Hacksaw at 4 p.m. Proceeds benefit St. Jude. Ho!
It's 10:25. Kay Adams with you till 12 on BBC Radio Scotland. England, Nigeria in the Women's Football World Cup is into extra time. It's a goalless draw. I think they've got I'm squinting at it, I can't really see. I think they've got 6 minutes of extra time on that, but goalless at the moment. Still to come this morning.
You got a friend in me. Oh, you got a friend in me.
Yeah, we all need a little help from our friends, but with more studies concluding that the pandemic had a negative impact on young people's social development. What can you do if your child struggles to form friendships? And
we've managed to reintroduce a very important historic event which has really been lost for centuries into the clan calendar.
Yeah, good news for the Buchanan clan. After 300 years, they have found a new chief. We'll hear more about that later. And of course, we have our travel surgery with Simon Calder here to answer all of your holiday queries. So text him on 80295 or give him a bell. Right now, it's Dua Lipa.
Get busy, y'all. Get busy, y'all. Check it out, party people, cause this party is burning. For a new dance, I know you've been yearning. This is for all you people concerning a brand new dance called the Pee Wee Herman. Just move your hand into the front, and if you can't hear the music, say, huh? What? As you're doing this dance, you might hurt your back, but just look at the crowd. Say, I meant to do that. It's the Pee Wee Herman new dance sensation. Just go with the flow, cause it's sweeping the nation. So come on, everybody, rock with Joeski as a teacher's new dance called the Pee Wee. It's funky fresh, so don't ridicule. So get on the floor and get off your bicycle. If you don't know how to do it, you better start learning this brand new dance called the Pee Wee Herman. Now, everyone just listen to me at the teacher's new dance called the Pee Wee. You jump around, act like a fool. Some think it's kinda dumb, but I think it's cool. And when you start acting foolish, you got it right. So let's do the Pee Wee Herman while I rock the mic. This dance is hot. In other words, it's burning. So let's do the dance called the Pee Wee Herman. Check it out, y'all. Now kick that beat. They'll be doing the Pee Wee every jam you enter. The journey along the Pee Wee Herman's great adventure. It's not hard, it's easy, you see. Just act like Pee Wee Herman, very stupidly. Some think it's dumb, some say it's cute. Throw on a bow tie, a tight plaid suit, your high water pants and your 5-inch heels, and now you look like Pee Wee Herman. How do you feel? You might have the urge to talk to your food while you're on the dance floor doing Pee Wee's groove. So listen to me and do what you're told, and don't forget to act like you're 5 years old, like Pee Wee Herman. Act like a jerk and get on the dance floor. Let your body work. So y'all work as the DJ keeps the turntables turning, and let's do the dance called the Pee Wee Herman. Yo, going out to the DJ Cool Chris, wherever you're on, shocking it on in the park center. You know what I'm saying? Columbus High School out there doing a Pee Wee stand. My cousin Louie Lou be Pee Weeing out there in the rooftop, you know what I'm saying? Word up to my partner JB Money, Entertainment Records, rocking it on. To the girl Karen from the Uptown side, you know what I'm saying? To the girl Naja. To my little sister Laura and Shanice that be doing the Pee Wee on the downtown scene, you know what I'm saying? Ha-ha. The masters of the Pee Wee dance. Cool man Chuck, chill out wherever he at. Little Wee freaks be rocking on. To the homeboys from Cedar Hallway, Easy and Born Free. To my mom, she be doing the Pee Wee too. She be rocking it. My man Miss Davis be doing the Pee Wee 247. Word up. I'm just in love. On the Pee Wee side.
Right, it is time to talk travel now here on BBC Radio Scotland. If you want a little bit of advice on how to get about, whether it's at home or abroad for the rest of the summer season, apparently we're going to get some good weather. It's not been that bad here, actually. I think it's been worse down south because they're kind of used to a good summer. I don't think it's been too bad in Scotland. But anyway, hopefully we're going to get a bit more sunshine. So whether you're staying at home or you are heading abroad, Simon Calder, our travel expert, is here to help. We'll be taking calls from 11 o'clock, 08085 92 95 00. You can text him at 80295. All those lines are open now. Now, I usually get generally very, very excited to play Where is Simon? But I think he's going to let me down today. Where are you, Simon?
Oh, look, hey, lovely to talk to you, but I'm actually in the independent office.
In the office.
You will hear the noises off, but I'm in the office. Isn't that miserable?
I like it when you're having a pastel de nata by a cafe in Madeira,
thank you, so do I.
And all that kind of stuff.
Well, can I tell you why? In my defence, actually, August is when an awful lot of travel news happens. It just does. For example, overnight, there are thousands of people who were thinking they were going to be flying between London and South Africa, and they are not. They're back where they started, at Heathrow or at Johannesburg or in Cape Town, because of the sudden closure of airspace in Niger was closed, and there were planes. Exactly. Airbus A380 Super Jumbo, British Airways, got halfway to Africa and then flew back, turned around over southern Algeria. Coming north, same thing. A Super Jumbo flew up as far as Chad and then turned back. Other planes have been diverting to Lagos to refuel on their way to and from South Africa. So it's just an illustration, first of all, that stuff happens, and it tends to happen at the height of summer when everybody's journeys are really, really important. So yes, I'm in the office just watching the chaos unfurl, I'm afraid. I wish I wasn't.
Yeah, there's the great irony of it. Of course, it makes sense, doesn't it? When the rest of the world is travelling, that's when stuff happens, as you say, and then that's why you have to be kind of lashed to the desk and reporting on it, which means that you won't be in some Mediterranean resort at 6 o'clock in the morning with a set of binoculars on your balcony looking to see if there's a sun lounger free.
It is absolutely absurd.
Is it actually happening? Is it happening, really? The Sun Lounger Wars.
It does seem to be at various locations. So there has long been, and I'm going back decades here, literally to the 20th century, if anybody apart from me can remember this, that there has always been this kind of phony war between I'm going to say the English as opposed to the British and the Germans about who gets the prime sun lounger spots beside the pool. And we've had another outbreak of this. The latest one is at the Hotel Rio Costa del Sol. People getting up ludicrously early to bag their sun lounger with a towel. This is all so unnecessary. And actually, Thomas Cook, very sadly, before it folded, came up with a really good idea. You pay an extra £20 or so, and you are guaranteed a particular sunbed by the pool for your whole holiday. And otherwise, if I ran a hotel in these places, I'd just say use it or lose it. You can't reserve a sun lounger with a towel. Either it's got a person on it or it's up for grabs. It's absolutely ridiculous. And also, I do need to give a health warning, particularly for sensitive Scottish skin. Spending hours roasting in the sun is a really bad idea anyway.
Yeah, it is, absolutely. But I don't know, it has become the sort of stuff of fables, hasn't it, the sun lounger wars? And I don't know, I think it just kind of amuses those of us who are stuck at home. It doesn't make us feel so bad. And when you hear about hotels instituting all these kind of, your towel can be there for half an hour, they'll give you half an hour's grace maybe to go and have a swim or go and have a drink or whatever, but then they'll take your towel away and there's actually, well, not police, but wardens employed to manage the situation. It doesn't exactly sound relaxing, does it?
Well, it doesn't, and that's really, really sad. And if you are engaged in that kind of war, I would politely suggest you find somewhere else to go on holiday next time. If you're going to go to a big mega resort where there are limited pool spaces and limited sun lounges around them, then you are going to hit problems. I was recently in a place called Titanic in Turkey, which has got a pool about the size, I'm slightly exaggerating, of Loch Lomond, and therefore with sunbeds all the way around it, I think there were plenty of beds to go around. But frankly, this is all ludicrous, and also it branches into rather extreme nationalism, with some people actually alluding that the Irish are among the worst offenders.
Really?
I have absolutely no proof of that whatsoever.
Controversial.
But this is how difficult these things become.
Well, I'll put that out to our lovely listeners because we'd like to hear these stories, wouldn't we, Simon? If you have been on holiday already this year and you have encountered sun lounger wars around your hotel pool, do tell us about it. What was happening out there? Who was the worst offenders? What time did you have to get up in the morning to get yourself a sun lounger? 80295 is the text number. We've already got lots of questions coming in for you, Simon. Insurance is cropping up quite a lot. Simon, happy to talk about that. But indeed, anything to do with travel, home or abroad, Simon Calder is your man. He's safely ensconced in the office. He'll probably have, I don't know, a wee egg roll or something by the time we see him at 11 o'clock. 08085 92 95 00. You can text us on 80295. Simon, thank you very much. We will be speaking to you very shortly. After this, from Rod Stewart, Future the Temptations, we'll be talking about what you do if your child finds it difficult to make friends.
Just like the music saying, gotta take chances. Go ahead, just do it and trust yourself. There's a soul in the city watching over us tonight. There's a soul in the city saying everything's gonna be alright. So bring over son your own Motown records. We'll put the speakers in the window and we'll go on the roof and listen to the miracles echo through the alley down below. Oh yeah, they wish us luck, but they think we're just dreaming. Let's prove them wrong, baby. Cause you know what luck is. Luck is believing you're lucky. That's all. And showing just a little bit of faith. There's a soul in the city watching over us, I swear. There's a soul in the city. There's a whole world waiting out there. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Rod's going to bring over some of his old Motown records. That's a good night in, isn't it? What time is it? It is 10:39. This is Kay Adams with you till 12 on BBC Radio Scotland. Recent research has concluded that the impact of the COVID pandemic on children's social development may be long-lasting. Now, given that childhood friendships are acknowledged to be vital for emotional development and well-being, what can parents do to help? Of course, the pandemic will not be the only thing that will have a bearing on children's friendships, but a significant one, I think. We're joined by Dr. Will Shield, child and educational psychologist. Good morning to you, Will.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. It was always going to take a little bit of time, wasn't it, so that we could try and work out what a sort of impact the pandemic will have had on some children, and it will be dependent on a lot of factors, I imagine.
Absolutely, and we're going to keep on finding out what's the impact the pandemic has had for children. I think we're seeing so many more children out of school than ever before. Children who are too anxious to go into school, children who are really finding it hard to make friends and to sustain friendships, and really struggling with feelings of anxiety and worry and low mood that we're really struggling with. And we can see the direct impacts of the pandemic, but this isn't just the pandemic. It's been happening for several years now, so we need to really try and understand how to support children in the best ways.
Can you see patterns developing dependent on the age and stage that children were at?
I think for some children who are now 7 or 8, they were sort of impacted quite a lot in their early years, because if they weren't going to nursery or they were having very different experiences in nursery and preschool, actually we're seeing lots of language difficulties and children who are really struggling to express themselves, communicate with other children, because they missed a year or so of their very early development. And so that's definitely a year group that we're getting a lot of referrals for in psychology services at the moment.
I mean, one would imagine that older children who had a chance already to form friendships might have been able to hold them together, and maybe it's one instance in where the online world was seen as a good thing, whereas the younger ones perhaps hadn't had a chance to make those friendships yet. I mean, how key is it to childhood development that children do have close friendships?
It's really important for children in terms of their identity development, their social development, their emotional development. I mean, some of the key things we see through friendships are children understanding how to negotiate, how to deal with conflict, how to develop their own identity of what they like, their interests, their hobbies. And I think it's really important that we keep on encouraging children to try new things, but often that comes through their friendship groups rather than us as adults or parents telling children what to do. And they really have to find it out through other children, through going out in the community, through playing at school at playtime, at lunchtimes and things. So I think when we think about friendship, it's not just about having friends and having a nice group of people to hang around with. Actually, it's really important for those early social and emotional developmental milestones.
It'll also be dependent, though, surely, on the individual child's personality. I mean, some are more naturally gregarious than others, and, some more shy, and which often for a parent, that can be a difficult thing if you have a shy child, particularly if you yourself are not shy.
Absolutely. And actually something that psychologists are quite interested in at the moment are children who are very introverted. So children who aren't very outgoing and have lots of friends, for children who prefer to spend time by themselves or who are more comfortable being a bit quieter and being a bit on the edge of friendships. And that's also fine. But I think we prioritise as a society and in schools those children who can put their hands up and communicate and are very confident. So I think something that's really important for us to do is recognise that some children are a bit shyer, are perhaps quite introverted, and perhaps want friendships to be a bit quieter and not be quite the centre of attention like some children need.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. We do tend to put an extra value, if you like, on gregarious kids who are chatterboxes and get on with lots of people, which can be very difficult, not just for the children who are less like that, but also for their parents, because you can't dismiss those kind of messages that just fly around. We've got Vanessa Canby with us, content creator, but in this instance, more pertinently, mum of 3. Morning, Vanessa.
Good morning, Kay.
Good morning. What's the age range of yours?
So I've got a 6-month-old who doesn't really count in this conversation.
Right, okay.
And then I've got a 6-year-old and a 10-year-old.
Right. And are they different personalities?
Yeah, so my daughter is much more confident, but also doesn't really care about what other people think. Whereas I'd say my son's much more sensitive and does care what people think.
Right. And as a mum, do you find yourself sort of, being aware of their friendships, their social circle and how they mix?
Yeah, definitely. I think the COVID sort of pandemic time definitely had an impact. I mean, I tried my best to keep them in contact with their friends and to meet, outside when it was possible and things like that. But I think just more the difference in being at school every day to now being at home to then being back at school again. I think that was actually the thing that people are struggling with, like that children are struggling with, rather than the friendship thing. But I think that has had a knock-on effect. So I feel like kids are potentially more anxious, have maybe behavioural issues, and that is having an impact on their friendships, rather than it being the friendship that is the problem, if that makes sense.
You're right. Yeah. So what impact do you think have you observed that it's having on friendships?
So what I've seen in the school as a whole is that kids have changed. Like, it's actually so strange. Like, I never thought that as a whole, kids could actually just change from that quite short period of time. But I guess in their lives, it's quite a long period of time. I do think that behaviours have totally changed. I think kids don't potentially treat each other with as much respect as they used to, which can lead to, bullying and things like that. And I've also seen, it's just been quite a difficult time for kids, basically, as the previous person said, adjusting back into school life, high levels of anxiety, which I just didn't see before.
Right. Will, does that resonate with you? Have we got Will there? Hang on.
Just now, but stay with it.
Hang on, we'll get Will. Hi there, Will.
Hi there.
Hi, sorry, we had a wee... I switched the wrong button, I apologise. Does what Vanessa says resonate with you?
It does. And I think the other thing is the teachers and the adults in schools are also far more stressed and far more anxious than they have been in the past. And that also has a knock-on, because when the adults aren't there and available to help children feel less anxious because they're busy and you've got too much to do, that can really affect the school whole system. So I think it's all these different factors sort of affect then friendships and mental health throughout the whole school system.
So for parents who might be concerned about their child's friendships and making friendships and not just making friendships, but interestingly, Vanessa brings that in, the way that they kind of moderate their friendships. To what extent should parents get involved, or do they just stand back and say, well, do you know what, got to let them get on with it?
I guess I would say I'm not a parent, so I won't comment on direct experience, but certainly the parents I work with I think they would say that there's a real balance between respecting their children's ability to form friendships and letting them get on with it themselves, but also providing that guidance and support when things go wrong or when things go well. And think about how they can really support communication and understanding, and just talking to their children about what friendships they want, what activities they want to do, and helping that happen. Often we as the adults have to be the ones to set up children's play dates and opportunities for kind of social activities and extracurricular clubs and things. But actually, if children are really wanting to do a certain activity, we can enable that to happen. But I think the key thing for teenagers particularly is to be there in the background, so they know they can come to us when they've got friendship issues or when they've got questions to ask, without us being too intrusive into their social world, because that is their world and that's how they're going to find out how to be their own person as they get older.
Yeah, be there in the background. I'm well used to that one now. Thank you very much, Dr. Will Shield, child and educational psychologist, and Vanessa Canby, thank you very much indeed too.
Following Scotland's teams...
We are Memphis Wrestling. Join us live starting tonight at Dave & Buster's in Memphis. Watch WWE SummerSlam absolutely free with us. That's tonight at Dave & Buster's in Memphis. Tomorrow, August 6th, former WWE superstars Chris Masters and Dirty Dango are coming to Memphis Wrestling. Meet them both at our VIP experience and save $5 with the code MASTERS at checkout. Saturday, August 19th, Memphis Wrestling at the Pontotoc Run Club are tag teaming with WWE Hall of Fame legend Hacksaw Jim Duggan to fundraise for St. Jude. Meet Hacksaw at 4 p.m. Reserve your seat today. Oh! Saturday, August 26th, Gleason, Tennessee. Get ready for the Tatertown Throwdown, benefiting Gleason High School. Sunday, August 27th, meet the real one, formerly known as Enzo Amore. How you doing? All tickets are on sale now. Get yours right now at ChampionshipWrestlingMemphis.com.
Still to come between now and noon.
Not even Xena is a match for the limited edition double-edged lightsaber from Star Wars.
You removed it from its original packaging.
No! It's no longer a collectible!
Yeah, collectible is a really big word in the toy and gaming world, so much so that rapper Post Malone, he paid $2 million for one trading card. We'll find out why that was so valuable. And
we've managed to reintroduce a very important historic event which has really been lost for centuries into the clan calendar.
Yeah, the Buchanan clan have found a new clan chief after 300 years without one.
That's right. That's right. LTB.
What's happening?
Romeo.
What's up?
Batman.
Yo,
That's
business.
right. Let it go.
Let me reward your house. Shall never murder with an eye for an eye. Gone and killing you soon will die. My service to the Lord. I run on that horse and warrior savior. Never there's on turbo. And I'm gonna
As I walk across the road, across the road, I just think about my life, how I grow up. And I think about the things that people do. And how kids are there can't go to public school. And I see how this world has been ruined. What can we do? 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 Peace to the end of the road, that's where we are. Where we are. Coast to coast.
Until the deal will keep rolling, filling it up with brand name from the east to the west to the planet. Better pay attention to the take a minute.
That's where we go. Give up the ghost. Coast to coast. Give up the ghost. Give up the ghost, yeah. Come on, coast to coast to give up the ghost. Give up the ghost. Coast to coast, give up the gun. All my home drill don't know just what to do. Cause there's a coffin over there waiting for you. Downloading all the info from your mind. When your soul is gone, you're really fine. Peace to the end of the world, that's where we are.
Understand it if you can. Stand there, that ball friend.
Listen, remember, Simon Calder is with us after 11 to take your calls with about anything to do with travel. 08085 92 95 00. You can text Simon on 80295. Lots of questions in on the subject of insurance, which is interesting. I also want to know whether you got involved in Sun Lounger Wars if you've already been away on holiday. 80295 is the text number. Now, to the uneducated, it would have looked like a tenner-penny kid's trading card, but to American rapper Post Malone, it was special enough for him to part with $2 million for it. So how do you know if you're sitting on a gold mine or a heap of garbage? With us is Andy Stowe, who's an auctioneer at Auctionium. Good morning to you, Andy.
Good morning.
Good morning. And Theo Kane, who is a retro toy collector. Hi, Theo.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Andy, how can a card be worth $2 million? What was so special about it?
So it was, I believe it was a one-of-a-kind Magic the Gathering Lord of the Rings card. So they only ever made one of them. So if you're a big collector of Magic the Gathering, the Lord of the Rings edition, and you need that one to complete your set, you're going to be paying those kind of figures for it.
So to have the complete set of something like that, are you doing that because you think, right, okay, well, now this is worth $10 million, or is it just I've got the full set?
Yeah, I think most times it's bragging rights down the pub. I think, but these kind of collectibles these days are very popular. People are starting to invest in them, so it can be a bit of both sometimes.
So that one particular card, given that it was the only one, I guess it wouldn't matter what kind of condition that was in, as long as it was reasonable. You're not looking for that to be in mint condition.
Condition will matter, but if there's only one of them, I think beggars can't be choosers is probably the saying.
Right. I mean, Theo, how important generally, if we're not talking about just cards, is the condition of a particular item in terms of its value?
Well, first of all, I completely agree with what you were saying about it. A lot of it is down to bragging rights, and obviously, if it's something that's a one-off, condition really doesn't matter. It's gonna factor into it just because it probably looks nicer. But if it's one card, and another card that got found was a Lord of the Rings, one ring to rule them all, single ring card, so it made sense that it was one. But yeah, I mean, in that case, it wouldn't really matter about the condition, like you said. When it comes to like general collectibles and stuff that was like mass-produced, condition is always going to be a factor, but again, it just comes down to the rarity of the item. If it's an item that's like super rare and you're going to find like one or two in a lifetime, then condition will factor into it, but it's still going to be a piece that's very high-end and a high price regardless.
In terms of what's desirable at any one time, does it kind of depend on, which generation is sort of in the driving seat, got the money, wants the bragging rights kind of thing, and they're looking back to their particular childhood that they want to rekindle in some way?
Absolutely, I think you'll agree with me in the sense that like something that maybe 30 years ago was really sought after amongst that generation now will be less sought after, because the people that are collecting now are people that maybe like was kids in the 90s and things like that. So the toys of the 90s are the ones that are now going to be more sought after than a toy that was like in the early 70s. There's always going to be that collector fan base, but it's going to get smaller and smaller because that generation will either have bought everything that they wanted, or they'll have bought everything and then sold it because they're over it, or they'll no longer be with us because as times move on, something that was part of someone's childhood, that person is not even around anymore. So
right.
it's a generational thing, and I was raised by a toy collector, so I've seen it from the start. And so toys in the 90s, like 15, 20 years ago, I remember my dad and his collector friends laughing like, oh, I can't imagine 90s toys will ever be worth anything. Like no one, because you could do a tenner penny, you'd go to a car boot and you'd fill your car up with them. But then now they're the ones that's starting to become more and more valuable. Not one ring to rule them all valuable by any means, but definitely a lot more valuable than they were like 15, 20 years ago. And I can't imagine in 20 years' time what the next thing will be that we're passing up now at car boots and not looking at.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I love that line. I was raised by a toy collector. That's absolutely fantastic. But so, Andy, with kind of normal antiques, if there is such a thing, it is almost like the older the item, the more valuable it would be. Interesting that Theo's saying that's not the case with toys.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's sort of not the case, particularly across the board these days. People that collect antiques. Well, an antique is something that's over 100 years old. most people don't remember those kind of items anymore. They want those things. They want that nostalgia kick, whether we're talking about toys or whether we're talking about furniture. I mean, like Victorian chest of drawers, you can find for like £20 or £30 now, but 1970 teak furniture.
Yes, mid-century they call it, don't they?
Mid-century, vintage, all of those words are so out there at the moment. They're so key and so well collected.
Yeah, so it's about nostalgia rather than value. But that puts a whole different kind of spin on it, actually. So what is kind of voguish right now? So, Andy, if you were to open somebody's dusty cupboard and think, wow, it's there, what would you be looking for?
So, I mean, in terms of toys, Star Wars, Ninja Turtles, Ghostbusters toys, that kind of thing, He-Man. Ceramics would be like 1960s studio glass, Scandinavian designed pieces, those kind of things, not your Royal Doulton vases and your kind of pool pottery. We want the things that people are about a generation away from remembering, the things that their mothers said they couldn't have in the toy shop. That's what's currently the key things to collect.
What about you, Theo? What would you like to find in the dusty cupboard?
Well, I completely agree with Andy on that one. If you were looking at like the Mount Rushmore of the big five of like toys that's now popular, you're looking at like Transformers, Ninja Turtles, Star Wars, He-Man, and maybe like Ghostbusters or Mask figures or something like that would be like a bit of a toss-up and things. But it's definitely also like I'm seeing a divide in the generation. Maybe like what collectors that are more of my dad's age, that's like in their 50s, that they seem to be a collecting generation that's a lot more into like stuff that's value, but like the value of it.
Theo, listen, thanks. We're out of time, but thanks.
You're smart.
This is Kay Adams with you till 12 on BBC Radio Scotland. Still to come in the next hour, travel expert Simon Calder is here to answer all your questions. He's going to be busy. We've got loads of calls in already. But pick up the phone, 08085 92 95 00, or you can text 80295, whether you're looking for some ideas on where to go, how to get there, or the best deals that are available. Usually Simon's somewhere exciting, not today.
In the office, isn't that miserable?
Yes, it is. But anyway, at least he's on the ground to answer your questions. Do get in touch. And
we've successfully reclaimed our history. The Buchanans are back.
Yes, the Buchanans are back, and we'll find out why very soon. And could a pill help postpartum depression? More on that.
All the conversations that matter.
Mornings with Kay Adams on BBC Radio Scotland.
Here's Shania Twain.
I've been to Colorado, where the mountains touch the sky, and I've done other things in life to lift my spirits high, but nothing that I've ever tried to do has taken me as high as loving you, 'cause you lift me up, 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 up to heaven when you gently lay me down. You lift me up, Love's taken me to places that I've never been before. But if it's not heaven when you're hugging me, well, it's the way that heaven ought to be. 'Cause you lift me up, 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 up to heaven when you gently lay me down. You lift me up, up, up to heaven. Yes, you make my world go round, and we never leave the ground. Up, up, up to heaven. Yes, you make my world go
Well, in the Women's World Cup, Nigeria and England are about to face off in penalties. They've done their extra time, still at a goalless draw, so we will see what for a place in the quarterfinals. Anyway, I will keep you up to date with that, but it is time to get to our travel surgery. Travel expert Simon Calder is here. Boring. He's in the office, which is a bit disappointing. But
Well, yes.